Hello everyone, we're ready to start the latest in our series. This is our Environmental and Urban Issues lecture series. Many of you are familiar with. It is sponsored by your Center for Environmental Studies at Santa Monica College and the Santa Monica College Associates, who are responsible for producing these wonderful flyers, and we have an online website that you can go to get the schedule for our series. Tonight is the fourth of 5 presentations, and this is of course for the community as well, and you'll see community members here who are interested in our topic for tonight. Just a note, on November 26th, Denny Zane is going to be here, and we're going to solve all of the transportation problems in Los Angeles, so that should get your attention, right? We've had a lot of really great speakers over the years. This is more than an 11-year series now that you've become a part of tonight, and so that's pretty cool. And did I just use cool in an official presentation? I shouldn't have done that, should I? But they're all fun and informative, and tonight is a perfect example. We brought 2 experts, certainly experts in their fields here. And most of you know that Santa Monica Pier is the most popular pier in the world now. Did I get that right?
It's one of the 10 most visited sites on YouTube.
Really? Yeah. Well, I'm just going to continue to call it the most popular pier in the world. And so
we can say the best.
The best, yeah, the best pier in the world. And so we want to know what's happening to the pier. There are a lot of plans for the future, and you get to play a role in those plans, and you're going to see how that works tonight. So tonight we've got Rob Merle here, and he's going to get us started. And you know, without me going on and on about it, just give him a round of applause, and he can introduce himself.
Very modern day wired here. So. Well, it's a privilege to come and talk about the pier. I've been on the pier for just about 2 years. Is this working? Okay. The PowerPoint coming up?
Yeah.
And I can tell you it's been a real treat. The pier is a very lively and exciting place, and there's a lot going on around it. It's a true treasure, and there's more and more focus on how do we, you know, the pier is 100 years old. How do we ensure it has another 100 years? How do we keep it relevant? How do we keep it accessible to all people? Because that's one of the joys of the pier. There's no fee like so many places to go on the pier. There's no hours. It's open all the time. It's a public treasure, and we want to keep it that way. So there's a lot we want to talk about. And so my role as pier manager is to basically coordinate all the activities that the city has in relationship to the pier. And there we go. And one of the things, this is a nationally landmark sign. As we go along, I'm going to do a little pier history, and you'll understand why it says it's a yacht harbor, because once upon a time it was. Okay, so this is the pier as it is today, and this is when the pier started, September 9th, 1909. Now, you'll notice that what you're seeing here is just that straight line out to the sea. You all think about the pier being wider, and that came later in 1916 when the pleasure part or the amusement part of the pier was added. But since we're talking about environmental issues, Santa Monica, parts of LA, Venice, Redondo, all these cities were running these kinds of straight lines out to the sea about the early 1900s. Do you know what they built them for? Huh? Well, the fishing was one of the things that happened, but huh? That came later. No, the early cities, and this is sad to say, but they used to run sewer lines out to the end into the ocean. That's the sad history of cities, not just here in California, but on coastal cities at the turn of the last century. Fortunately, it went on to have better things, and now you know, the key is not to do that. But that was how cities at the turn of that century dealt with sewage. If they were along the coast, they would put it out in the ocean. So it's sad to learn, but that is why a lot of piers were originally built. Particularly the ones that weren't necessarily anchorages, were docks for ocean-going ships. They were used that way. it also, fortunately, was a promenade. By the way, I don't know if you can see way out there. That's those of you who know about the history of Theodore Roosevelt and what they called the Great White Fleet, when he was showing American sea power and so forth and building these ships and short. Those are naval vessels out there.
If you could hold the mic up.
Yeah, those are naval vessels out there from that era. But here's another shot. And you also notice in those days you could just walk right down to the pier, because this was before there was a freeway, obviously, and all those roads. But you could again see those naval vessels out there. And so people did fish, people promenaded on the pier, which we still encourage. And then in 1916-17, the amusement part of the pier was added. That's that wide, kind of squarish section. It's, right now, we're at the one end is Pacific Park, the other end, the pier parking lot. By the way, how many people have been to the pier in the last month? All right, now that is great. That's great. So this is when they were building the first roller coaster, and it was a man named Charles Looff, L-O-F-F, that built this amusement pier in 1916. So the original municipal pier is 1909, and this amusement pier is 1916. And here's a view in 1918. You can see out here, at that point, the Hippodrome, where the carousel was built in 1916 also, as they were building the roller coaster. So the historic pier, as we think of it now, those buildings were going up at that time. And this is a picture in 1918. By the way, any of you who are interested in pictures of old Santa Monica, not just the pier, the Santa Monica Library online has a wonderful resource of pictures throughout the Santa Monica's history that you can go to and get these kinds of pictures. This is interesting. I was talking to Jim Harris, who's the pier historian, and this actually was an electric vehicle that went up and down the sidewalk there. So we think we're ahead of the time, but some people were ahead of our time. But you could see, and you can see the Hippodrome, other than the top, is still pretty much the same today, and will be 100 years old in 2016. I'm sorry. The roller coaster. This was a recreational pavilion. Notice how shallow the beach was. One of the things as we go forward in history, because we're talking about some of the environmental aspects, things that changed. This beach became much, much deeper after they built the breakwater in the 30s. And it still has an effect, even though you don't see other than some of the rocks that still remain from the breakwater. It still has that effect of creating more and more sand, because the sand is back here by the Hippodrome. Today it's out all the way out here. So that accretion of sand, things that we do, it's just like I grew up in the Hermosa area, and it used to also have a narrow beach like that. And when they built the Marina del Rey, that similarly caused the accretion of sand further down. So, you know, we have a lot of man-made effects by the things we build out here along our coast, to things like the depth of beaches. I think this is 1924, because the roller coaster, here it is. The roller coaster has changed. The first roller coaster burned down, and they built a different one. And this is 1924. Some of you may have heard of the La Monica Ballroom. It was at one point the largest ballroom in the world. That's this structure here. And it's famous, as you'll see from the quote there. When it opened, 50,000 people came, and it was the first traffic jam in Santa Monica. And I don't think we've recovered. But it was an amazing facility. And in the 30s, any of you, you know, I'm portraying my generation, saw a film called They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which was about the dance marathons during the 30s, when people were early 30s, because of the Depression. People could win prizes if they could dance for 24, 48 hours and so forth. That actually all happened there. It was filmed there, the movie, by the way, but that's where those things happened. And later on, there were musicians like Spade Cooley and others that had radio shows there. In fact, Jim Harris tells me the first live radio show of a band on the West Coast was out of there. So that had a storied history. And you could see, if you looked at the Hippodrome with these kinds of designs, and it had the same kinds of architectural features, it was considered, it was supposed to be a kind of a Baghdad fantasy with the buildings that were built at that time. And that's at night. It's pretty amazing. Now, we're moving to the 30s, and I'm going to portray my age, you know, again, but some of you may have heard. There's this gentleman, Olaf Olsen, had a fishing boat at the end of the pier. For many, many years, he was quite a character at the pier. And he did really wonderful things, like during the Depression, he would take people who were unemployed out so they could fish, so they could get their dinner, catch their dinner. But if you look at that, and that he is the basis for Popeye. An artist named Seagar lived in Santa Monica. He was a big, tall, strong guy, and he always had that pipe in his mouth. But that was the basis of Popeye, was this fellow, and he was quite the character.
What was his name again?
Olaf Olsen.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, there's a lot of fun things that happened at the pier like that. The pier in those days had a lot of fishing launches. It had cafes and so forth at the upper level, but also beneath the pier there was a level. Paddleboarding started at the pier in the 30s. It's coming back into favor again. And also, later on, one of the first lifeguard services was at the Santa Monica Pier. Yeah, first lifeguard services was at the Santa Monica Pier, and there was a guy named Peter Peterson, and one of his inventions was the lifesaver round the circle, the kind of styrofoamy thing that people use for rescues. So there was a lot of innovation. It's one of the oldest lifeguard services in the country, and had a long tradition. This is 1934, and I told you about the yacht harbor. This is, in 33, the citizens of Santa Monica voted to create a breakwater so that they could create that, and that's what you see here. And so we had a yacht harbor. At one point, they even had rides to Catalina going back and forth from here, and it was quite active. Again, here's the ballroom. The Ferris, by 34, they took down again the amusement park because it fell under bad financial times. The economy was bad, but they did put in the yacht harbor. And again, you can see where the coastline is. In 37, again, you get that view of the yacht harbor. So now storms later tore the top parts of that off. If you go out when the tide is low, you'll see some of the rocks are still there, and below the surface there is still a lot of the breakwater there. That's why sand keeps still building up, but it isn't sufficiently high enough anymore to give the protection for a yacht harbor. Yes. The bond measure, I think it was 33, it was built in 34. 34? Yeah. And it had a false start. I think the materials they used first didn't work out so well. They actually had to kind of build it twice. In fact, actually, that reminds me of an important story. Back in 1909, when the municipal pier was built, it was the first pier in the country to use concrete pilings. Sounds great. However, they used local sand, and apparently it wasn't a particularly good formulation, because by 1920 they had almost 90% failure. So they took out the concrete pilings and put in old wood pilings. Those are the wood pilings that we are replacing now on the pier. They've been out there for 93 years. They're due retirement, and we're putting concrete pilings in, but concrete that actually works. But it's interesting history. Again, it was something that was tried. It just didn't work. They got ahead of themselves. The one other factor of history was, if you've heard of the gambling ships that used to be off the coast, supposedly beyond the legal control of the state of California. The Rex was one of the most famous. And people used to take a launch from the end of the pier out to the gambling ships, and they had liquor and gambling and entertainment and so forth, and were very popular for a few years. And then there was an attorney general in California that insisted that they did have authority over it, and wound up seizing these ships and taking them down. And that attorney general was Earl Warren, who later became governor and then Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And that's a picture of the Rex. The Rex was one of the more famous ones. They did talk about false advertising. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, the other one was the Photoshop. This, I always like this picture. This was the summer of '42, standing at the end. There was a restaurant on upper deck on the pier looking back on Santa Monica in 1942, in June or July of '42. You could kind of see people were driving all the way out here. You could go down. There were ramps down here to boats. There was a lower deck down here that had more restaurants. And you could see the old La Monica there, which by that time had been used temporarily for a lot of things. It had an aquarium in it for a while. It was the city jail for a while. So it had a multiplicity of uses. But and you can see there's downtown Santa Monica in 1942, and this is the Deauville Hotel, which was a very expensive hotel that was right on the beach, and now that disappeared. Was it about the 60s, I think? Sometime on, yeah. 64, the freeways coming through. You could see, unfortunately, La Monica's gone. It's pretty empty out here. We still have restaurants and shops along here, the Hippodrome's here, but this is pretty empty at this point. Then there was a time when the leadership, or part of the leadership of the city, wanted to take the pier down, and there were various ideas about having an island that would be a resort island instead, and these sorts of things. And there's a lot of detail on this because it went on for a while, but basically in 1973, the public fought that move by the city manager and some of the city council to tear down the pier, to replace it with some kind of pleasure resort. And it was a really democracy in action kind of moment. So the pier was saved. It was saved for about 10 years. And then we used to also, in the interim, there were a lot of filming, the Sting and so forth. The pier is used for filming constantly. We always have film crews out there. But what I'm saying, in 10 years, so we saved it from the political forces, but then nature came along in 1983 with a couple of storms that just devastated the west end of the pier. That's what you had left. The community came together and worked very hard to raise funds to ensure that the pier would be rebuilt, because the western third of the pier was gone, and they succeeded. And one of the things that we're talking about this year was the 29th anniversary of Twilight Dance Concerts. The dance concerts were started to bring attention to the pier and how important it was to restore the pier and save the pier. So that's part of the tradition. That's why those concerts were created. And here you can see the reconstruction of the pier. When they reconstructed this portion, they did put good concrete pilings in. And that's what you see now. And one of the things that in the 90s, early 90s, was the concern about restoring the amusement park concept to the pier, and that Pacific Park that's here, and pretty much where the La Monica Ballroom used to be in the old days. But what you see here, this is the municipal pier, and this is the amusement pier. In the 70s, after all the political issues of saving the pier were resolved, this all became one ownership and all became part of the city. But you can still see the dividing line. When you walk on the pier, if you'll notice, there's a yellow wooden curb on the south side, that's the dividing line, because the two piers are about 4 inches different in height. The municipal pier is 4 inches lower than the amusement pier. So that brings us up to today, or very recently, and in 2012, the city moved to try to create a new governance structure to create more focus on the pier itself. They created the department that I have, the department which is me, the Office of Pier Management, and to coordinate, because there wasn't an individual, or hadn't been since the 90s, an individual from the city that's on the pier, walks the pier every day, becomes an advocate for the pier, so to speak, within the city. So that was created. We deal with leasing, we deal with all the city services there. We try to primarily focus on how do we enhance the visitor's experience to the pier. And here's our website. And at the same time, back when the storm destroyed the portion of the pier, there was a nonprofit created to help support that, to do the twilight dances, to try to market the pier, to try to, you know, get the word out about the pier and encourage the cultural side of things that happen at the pier. And that had been called the Pier Restoration Corporation. In 2012, the feeling was from the council, we've restored the pier, we need to be looking forward, how do we keep the pier relevant and active and a popular place. So instead, it's now the nonprofit portion is the Santa Monica Pier Corporation. And their responsibilities are for the events, like the Twilight Dance series, and the concerts, and some of the paddleboard races and so forth, marketing and sponsorship, the street performers we have, and guidelines on things like events and marketing and sponsorship. So those are things that really a nonprofit can focus on, because of marketing and so forth. They're not necessarily the best thing for cities to do. And this, they went to a membership. We have a 7-member board for the Pier Corporation, which involves a lot of people that have been involved in various levels and various ways with city government and activities. And they're also helping by, as we're doing planning activities and so forth, creating a place where people can come and give their opinions. If there's activities like later on, Salim's going to talk about the pier bridge replacement, that we can have public meetings, make sure that there's a great opportunity to have for people to come and talk about what's going on the pier, talk about their opinions about these things. So that's one of their roles, is to assist the city with public outreach. And the kinds of things we're dealing with, as I said, the focus is enhancing the visitor experience. We're trying to look at issues of access and parking. I am in a process every year now where I try to go to 20, 25 different community meetings and tell people what's happening at the pier and also get their responses of what's important to them. I think it's important that we go to these groups because, you know, it's one thing to have a big meeting, and this is just good to know generally about the political process. You could have town halls and so forth, and they're important to have those. But if you want to have more discussions and kind of get this perspective of each group, you need to go to their meetings and talk to them directly. So I try to do that, and it's interesting. The consistent things, the themes that I've gotten just as feedback about the pier is, we love the pier, don't mess it up. You can improve it. There's things that do need improving, but don't change the things I mentioned, that everybody can go to it, that it's, you know, it's for everybody. It's recreational as much as it is commercial. But there are 3 areas for improvement, and one was food. People thought that we should do a better job on ranges of food and kinds of food and so forth. Access, which hopefully the Pier Bridge and some of the changes we're making there, and the perennial issue of parking and public transit and so forth. And events, and that's something the Pier Corporation is trying to do, that we have more year-round events and more diversity of events, so we really make sure that we hit all age groups. I mean, those are the emphasis that I get from groups. So it's more about enhancing the pier. It's not about developing the pier, because the pier is already nicely developed as it is. It's about how do we make it work better. So when I was mentioning the activities, the look is the Pier Corporation's looking in 5 areas to have programming, and that's music, film, art, education, and active lifestyle. We're trying to connect the pier better with the downtown, the new parks. The expo, it's coming. The expo is a very important thing for us, is to connect to that and to the Esplanade to make sure, because this allows a whole new group of people to easily access the pier. And we want to make sure, when we'll be talking about the Pier Bridge, that that pedestrian access, particularly and bicycle access, is emphasized. Facilities and utilities enhancement, we just in the last year and a half have replaced all the lights with LED lights. It's actually reduced our lighting costs and, more importantly, energy consumption by more than 3/4. Facility reductions of obstructions. Those, in fact, those yellow curbs that I mentioned, one of the problems is that when they built them, and they didn't build them so there's just the 4 inches they were built, so people keep tripping over them, and they're, you know, too tall. So we're cutting those down so that they're a little more people friendly. We want to create a signage program or wayfinding, because there really isn't one now, but we're in the process. Created hourly parking rates, because a lot of people say, I want to come down for an hour. Why do I have to pay an all-day rate? So we're trying to deal with that. The bridge enhancement I'll talk about, and little things that we try to do. We've added some footbaths, because so people can wash their feet, you know, by the restrooms. Some, you know, things like that are important to people. It's the little things that really count. So, talking about the pier. So this is again the upward view of it. But when we talk about how big it is, it's about 350,000 square feet of deck. About 25% of that right now is used for parking. One of the things we want to look at is that the best use is for parking. You know, some of it maybe always needs to be for disabled parking, but most of this we can look at, there's better public uses, we think. The park represents about 20% of the pier. This is our walkway. It's our front door is going up and down from one end to the other there. So we really want to try to use our land a little better. We don't want to put buildings in here, but you could have more events, you could have more recreational activities. We can look at things as we reduce parking and go to more public uses. This was an old slide. This is now Tongva Park and Town Square. But what I'm really trying to look at here, because we're talking about urban issues, we really want to make sure the pier connects. The pier historically is almost operated like it was an island. It isn't. It's part of the downtown, and we want to make sure that we make it, you know, much more connected to it. So this is a great time to do this, because this Tongva Park has now gone in and it's open. Olympic Boulevard is going to be opened here. The Esplanade to connect to the light rail is going to come straight to our Pier Bridge. So this is the time. This is the new park, Tongva Park, a wonderful facility. These things, if you stand here, it looks right at the pier, so we couldn't be happier. And it creates a new way for people to come to the pier. They can park at the Civic Center parking lot and walk through the park. So we need to really examine how do we make that walk more pleasant, and encourage people to take advantage of the park as part of the pier experience. The other thing is the Esplanade. The Esplanade is rethinking Colorado Boulevard, connecting from the train station, the Expo train station at 4th, right to the pier, to the front door of the pier. We want that to really be the backbone, connecting the pier to public transit in terms of Expo, to 3rd Street, to the Civic Center, to the park. And so it's really important to design, and we want to be very proactive in relating to that. It's going to mostly feature a much larger sidewalk here, so we really emphasize pedestrians. We're going to de-emphasize cars. There will only be one way westbound, and there'll be committed bike lanes, and that'll come right to the Pier Bridge. And so now this, when I turn this over to Salim and he talks about the Pier Bridge and the bridge reconstruction, we want to make sure that you have that same experience going right down to the pier deck. So again, this is this intersection area. Here you can see where you walk out of the park, and you can come over to enter the pier from the park side. But this is what we have right now. Not exciting. Not particularly the most inviting pedestrian experience. So this is what's planned, and you're going to have something like this with some Tivoli lighting, the wide sidewalks, street furniture, benches, and so forth, landscaping, and it'll all be funneled to look right down the road, centered on the pier sign and the pier bridge. So now I want to talk about what we're doing at the moment in terms of replacing a portion of the pier, those 93-year-old wooden pilings, how we're getting their retirement organized. The first thing I want to say, though, we're about halfway through with this project, but the pier has been open and will stay open throughout all of our construction activities. We want people to come down. In fact, in the mornings when I walk around, I see a lot of people down there with cameras and video recording the construction, because it's pretty interesting. And I invite you to come down and take a look to see how a pier is really built. But before we get to that, I want to say that the first thing we did before we even started that was, one of the things looking out my window, because I'm right up there, the conflict between cars and people and bikes scared the heck out of me, you know. And we had to find something, and unfortunately the police chief and engineering working together, we came up with something as the interim solution, and you'll hear the long-term solution from Salim, or some solutions. Before, they had these high curbs, which were very narrow, and I don't know how anybody with a stroller or a wheelchair got down them. They were forced into the street. One of the things we found was that, in fact, these things were hollow. And one of the other things was that this rail height was all wrong, because the rails were here. It's because they added those at the end of the construction, and they didn't change the rails. But we were able to take those out and create a real walkway with the protection of K-rail. So this is, it gives us some separation. And this, and the bike lane is shared bike lanes. There's a sign there. And I will say, you know, I can't say scientific clicking buttons, but watching and walking here, that we've probably at least doubled, if not more, the number of people who bike to the pier now, that they have that. So it really works. It just creates a much more better environment, and having all the width on this side so people feel a little more comfortable, so you can take a stroller down and so forth. But again, it's the short-term solution, because we still have the issue that this bridge is a 10% slope, which is pretty tough for people, particularly people in wheelchairs, people pushing strollers, and so forth. So this is one of the things, or the kinds of things we want to address with the pier bridge replacement. And you can see it's the different things. Okay, so now we have construction, and we say, what's up with that crane? We are replacing the portion of the pier. Those of you who remember those awful metal plates that have been there since 2002. They've been there 10 years. They were put in because of the structural issues there to spread the load, the metal plates. They were put in thinking, well, it's not too bad. It'll be replaced soon. So now, 10 years later, but we're getting to it. But the city did save up the money so that we can replace. This is an $8.5 million project. But this portion of the pier, which is basically from in front of Pacific Park out to about the middle of that narrow neck, is what's left of over water of those wooden pilings that, as I said, are 93 years old. This stuff to the west was what was replaced after the '83 storm, so it's very sturdy. This poor part was really very challenged. So that's all being replaced, which means that all the pier that's over water will have concrete pilings and be in good shape. And as I say, the goal is to get another 100 years out of it.
So that's all going to be replaced with concrete, so you'll be walking on top of concrete?
No, it'll be just like what's out there, yeah. Oh, the question was about, is it being replaced by concrete? The pilings are concrete and the substructure. What we're returning to is an all-wooden deck again.
Okay. And is that going to be easy to walk on?
Well, it's a wooden deck.
You bring a girl.
I know, the high heels question. But we have a tradition of a wooden boardwalk. So, you know, what happens with wooden decks is as they age, they expand and contract, so the space between the planks will get larger. Yeah.
Like, don't you have like any other solution instead of putting the real wood so that, you know, like it's something looks like wood, or, you know, like they replace the wood with some other
There's a commitment with
Repeat the question.
the question was, could we use something other than wood or some synthetic wood? And the city has a strong feeling about using real products, not using chemically treated products for this deck, to be a genuine wooden boardwalk.
Doesn't it cost more than like just replace with some other material and then, you know, like instead of every 20?
Well, you could replace it with asphalt. They've done that in some times, but it's not where the city is on that. And we have a very strong landmarks commitment on this to restore it to being a wooden pier and wooden boardwalk.
Suggestion, just maybe we could hold the questions until after the presentation, and then I can move the microphone around to the
Whatever,
asking
yeah.
the questions. Is that
Sure.
okay? That might work a little bit.
But it's a, you know, we talked about values, and the city has some strong values about historic preservation and about authentic materials. Just to give you the sense, again, this was this, and see, they had asphalt here and things like that. Asphalt actually will crack and all that, but it's the boardwalk is what we want. We wanted to restore it, so it's going back to that. The underneath is really, it's not only construction-wise, it's starting to really get bad. But utilities, we're going to rationalize all the utilities under. The tradition, unfortunately, like a lot of things, was when new lines would go out, whether they were electrical or telephone or now internet, they were just kind of added and abandoned, and it was a big maze under there. So everything's coming out, and a clean system's going in with conduit and all that. So this is the concrete pilings as opposed to these wood pilings. Do you see this? This is like a little rubber gasket around this because it's already eaten all the way through. So that's all going to be gone. To do this, though, let me go back here to this. So this portion is out over the water. To do this work, we created a parallel temporary trestle. We built a temporary trestle so that the access was maintained throughout the construction. So this is the building of the parallel trestle. And then you can see it as it's completed so that this work can take place. And right now, they're pouring the concrete substructure. They've done most of the pilings. They just need to do some pilings. We deferred the pilings in front of the park until winter so that we wouldn't have issues with the public being able to get easy access. Once this concrete substructure is done, then they'll start putting the wooden deck across. We're hoping to be done by the end of March, so it'll be ready for spring break. So Salim's going to talk about the Pier Bridge replacement because we really want to get some opinions. There's some alternatives have been looked at, and I'm just going to say that this is the kind of thing we want. Now on the pier is like, you know, the old thing about a little city, but I mean it has a lot of services. The pier is always open. So we have 24/7 personnel. We have harbor guards who not only patrol the pier, but they also take care of the buoys to keep boats from going into the rocks that used to be the breakwater. To anybody that falls in, they rescue and that sort of thing. But just so you know, if you go toward the end of the pier, they're there. They can do first aid. If you cut yourself, you got a splinter or something, feel free to go there to get help. And also the restrooms. We have 2 sets of restrooms on the pier. We have some brand new ones in the middle of the pier. But we also have, and I always like to make sure people know that the restrooms on the west end are open 24/7. Because we have fishermen out there all the time too, so we want to make sure we have that service there. That's the harbor guard's boat, so they do patrol around the pier. And then there's also a police substation at about the middle of the pier. Maintenance, the deck boards, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge where you constantly are replacing them. Also painting, nails. The hardest part is where the cars are. The cars destroy the wood, and quite frankly, any kind of fastener, because the vibration, causes abrasion, but it also makes the nails pop up over time. But we do a lot of painting. We just painted the trim on the carousel building, the Hippodrome, and so it's pretty constant because I have a crew of 3 to take care of the pier. This is the new restrooms that were put in about 2008, I believe, to really increase the capacity. No smoking on the pier. This is, I think I say no, excuse me, there's no smoking more than anything else I say all day. And we have this, as you see, in 10 languages, so people can leave their cigarettes. Because, quite frankly, there's 2 groups that predominantly smoke. A lot of people who come from countries where smoking's not, at this point is not banned particularly, or are restricted in the outdoors. And most of them are very compliant when I explain to them. It's not like they're, doing this on purpose. But I do explain it is a wooden pier. And we've had several fires out on the pier, small ones, but what happens is, as I say, boards abrade over time and dust and stuff gets in between them. A cigarette going between those boards, it'll smolder and pop up. Well, there is from where the cars are. Motor oil is a problem. Yeah. We do have these placards about what to do on the pier, but I want to give you an idea. We have benches, and we're trying to increase the number of benches as well as the number of bike parking spaces on the pier, because beach and ocean and people watching are, I would think, basically the number one activity. We replaced all the telescopes, so they actually work now and are pretty good. You have Pacific Park, and does everybody know what's unique about the Ferris wheel?
The only solar-powered Ferris wheel in the country.
That's right.
You got to repeat that.
It's the only solar-powered Ferris wheel in the country. So there's the Pacific Park. We have fishing decks. There's one on each side, and then one on the west end. It's interesting. The pier has a life every day. When I come in the morning, there's a lot of runners. There's people strolling. And some fishermen. Then over the course of the day, more people come to go to the recreational activities. In the evening, they come to eat and listen to music. And then in the middle of the night, these decks are packed with fishermen. So, and sometimes they'll bring their families, and they'll have, like a kid in a little basket kind of thing, but the family's out there fishing. So, over the course of the day, different people use the pier differently. Events. As I said, Pier Corporation, their key is to do a lot of events. Way over yonder was the first time the Newport Folk Festival had a program outside of Rhode Island, and that was just this last month. We have something called Roga, which we have every quarter, which is run in yoga, and there's yoga instructors there. It's free for the public, and there's a little run and then the yoga training. The outdoor movies. Of course, we have to mention the Sting. Paddleboard races. I mentioned Twilight Dance Series earlier. We have this weekend we have a program that's emphasizing science, technology, engineering, and math, and it's kind of like what was science fair for adults. So we hope people think of coming out. We've of course got the carousel. The carousel, why I have 1922? This particular carousel was built in 1922 in Philadelphia. And it really is of a special era when there are very, very few of these carousels that it's all handmade wood carousels. These are phenomenal items. The interesting story about this carousel was built in Philadelphia in 22. It was on the Venice Pier until 1946 when a fire destroyed the building that it was in. And then the person who operated the amusement or the facility on this side grabbed it and moved it here. So it's been here since 46, but it was built in 22. The aquarium. This is the most underappreciated item on the pier because it's under the pier. There's something like 1,000 species of sea critters and sea plants that are from Santa Monica Bay. The aquarium is open every afternoon. In the mornings, it's open for schools, and they do school events. It's under the east end of the pier. One of the things with wayfaring, I want to make sure more people know it exists. It's a great facility. It's run by Heal the Bay. We have a trapeze school. I don't know if everybody knew that. If you wanted to take your chances. The arcade. I'm always amazed in the age of electronic and video games that this does well, but they do extremely well. Yeah. You can rent bikes. Restaurants, we have a new restaurant. This is the sketch of it, and there it is. It opens actually next Monday, Almari, so an Italian restaurant. It's right next to the Carousel or Hippodrome building. Just going down some of the food choices. Soda Jerks in the Hippodrome, Ice Cream Parlor, Rusty's Music, Santa Monica Seafood, Bubba Gump's, Pier Burger. So these are give you some of the choices. And Maria Salt. Plus we have carts. I don't know if you know, we have carts that have fresh juices and fruit. We have a cart that has German sausages. We have a popcorn and candy cart. So, you know, try to variety. We're actually going out, just in case anybody's interested. We do it periodically because we want to keep giving opportunities for 4 new carts, and we really encourage diversity of food carts. So we try to mix that up. We're trying to be responsive to that desire to see more food choices. And of course, Pacific Park has its own food court with the chain stuff, the Taco Bell. But I mean, they give you a lot of choices: Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, Coffee Bean, and the funnel cakes and things like that. All good, healthy foods. But we do have, as I mentioned, carts, and we have performers. I don't know if you've seen, we have street performers, and people ask me, do we select the street performers? No, the street performers, anybody who wants to be on the pier or the promenade needs to get a license from the city, but we don't choose talent and so forth on the pier because there's very limited space, because obviously performers are spaced out between each other and so forth, so that the flow of traffic can happen. There's a lottery 3 times a day for the people who perform, and anybody who has a street performer license can enter that lottery and see if they can get picked for a space. So, you know, there's a real mix of there's people who draw sketches, there's people who play music, there's people who make your face in clay, and, you know, there's all sorts of things. But the city doesn't choose who performs. It's open to anybody who feels they can be a performer. Performers now can't charge a fixed price or any of that. It's all donation only. So we have the tours. We have a bait and tackle shop. We have a rock shop, so to give you a kind of deal. And the Route 66. I'm mentioning this because people love to have their picture taken at the Route 66 sign. I have to tell you, Route 66 actually went down Santa Monica Boulevard. So, but it's I guess it's the emotional thing of, well, it should end at the sea. So people emotionally think of this as the end, but it was Santa Monica Boulevard. There's all kinds of the tchotchkes, you know, for sale on the pier, both in stores like the Beachcomber and also at the carts. And there's the west end of the pier, and you can see kind of the mix of carts and performers and so forth. Our website. We try to keep everybody abreast of what's going on the pier. We encourage you to come. Santa Monica Gov, smgov.net, SM Pier. And so we'll have the events. If you wanted to get a cart, you can put your name in for every time we have an RFP for carts. It'll tell you what the Pier Corporation is doing as events too. And we also give us your opinion. Let us know what works and doesn't work, because the only way we can improve something is to know what doesn't work and what we could do better. So we want to make sure that that's part of it. So as I say, you can email me directly. You can email our website. These are the kinds of questions we often ask. So In fact, let me ask, so how many people come to the pier every month, at least once a month? Okay, that's pretty good. Every week? Okay. So you'll see me out there. I walk, if you come during the day, I'm around. So if you got questions, come and see me. I'm up in the carousel building. And I'm going to turn it over to Salim, who's going to talk about something we really do want a lot of input on, and that's our Santa Monica Pier bridge replacement. The existing pier bridge is going to be replaced, and we need to talk about what it's going to look like.
All right, wow, that was amazing. I mean, anything left? Everything you need on the pier. You want food, you want entertainment, you want beach, sun, have fun. That's where you are. So I'm going to talk about pier bridge replacement. My name is Salim Eren. I'm a civil engineer, one of the civil engineers who work at the Civil Engineering Division on the Public Works Department at the city. I do many different infrastructure projects, street resurfacing, sidewalks, water main, wastewater main, infrastructures, and this is one of my biggest, showcase piece projects. So I want to kind of show you where the pier bridge is. So we talked about the pier itself. Pier Bridge starts from Colorado Avenue, Ocean Avenue and Colorado intersection, all the way down where the wooden section starts. This concrete ramp, per se, is the Pier Bridge. So because we have so many special things on the pier and pier itself, we have pier sign, we have the Palisades Park, we have the Tango Park here, endless amenities. Pier Bridge is just a simple connection that connects the downtown, the city, to the pier. It is very important to have it because that's how we get to the pier. But it's not as important as the pier itself, with the rich history and what it serves to city and us. So this is the bridge, concrete bridge, which was built 1939 and 40. It's a very simple structure. Has 2 columns every so often, and a deck, a railing on both sides. Very narrow, minimalistic structure. It slightly goes up from the intersection to allow the roadway network beneath to provide safely passage to traffic flow. There are various pictures I just wanted to point out, because many people, when you go out there, you basically walk over it and don't realize that's what we have there. But that's the whole point. This is other pictures. Here we are, just to get some sense what we're dealing with, just in case somebody doesn't know the area or. So this is under the pier, the bridge. This is from the oceanfront walk. This is the spectacular view that everybody stops. Rod mentioned on that a little cigarette ashtray. We had like 10. When you go out there, you don't hear much English. A lot of tourists, international tourists, national tourism, and local regional tourism is also very important when it comes to Pier. Like I mentioned, it was built in 1939, 1940. It doesn't meet current seismic standards structurally. It's standing still. It's carrying all the load as is in a pretty good condition. However, because the standards has been changed since it was built, it's not meeting the codes, and there are some deterioration on the concrete sections. So it's almost at the time to about the time to retire the structure, build a new structure with also address some of the access issues to the pier itself. Pier sign, Rod mentioned, top 10 most Instagrammed location, the pier and the sign in the world. I mean, people just jump on the street, take pictures, and more all day long. And who uses the pier and the bridge? We all do. And this is a typical Sunday, summer Sunday, and it's not crowded only on summertime, in summer days, but whenever the weather is good, even in winter, I mean, everybody goes there. Some more pictures just to give you some idea. The main point I'm trying to make is that it's mostly used for people, for us to get there, get through the bridge itself here in the background. A little bit more site views. I'm going to refer to these names. That's why I brought up this slide here. Palisades Park, Mumat Ahiko Way, that goes under the bridge. This is an on and off ramp to the PCH. Appian Way, that goes also under the bridge. This street, when you want to go down to the 1550 lot, this is the street that you would go through. You would go through and get under and then go through the boots. There's another small street called Moss Avenue Street, which is right by where the Dragon Park is. I'm not sure if that's the correct name, but that's what I call it. Is that little park. The setting is iconic, historical, world-class destination. It's a great asset, and has a rich history. Rod mentioned, in detail. But I like this kind of this roller coaster, history of the pier, when it was built, and then when it was, partially destroyed and rebuilt, and moving forward, we're looking at 100 years back, and we're looking 100 years forward. And we're, as far as the bridge replacement, we're looking to open the new bridge in 2017. Again, the main purpose of the project is to improve structural safety. It's a structurally deficient and functionally obsolete vehicular bridge. Still, the bridge design would still address to carry the vehicular load and addresses current seismic codes. Throughout our meetings with, we have a great staff. We have a great history, knowledge, and feeling of what Santa Monica is, what Santa Monica residents, businesses, people come here need. All these people with the city, we got together, we met with the Pier board, we met with many other community groups, and we came up and based on our conversations, these guiding principles of the new bridge design, how the new bridge design should be, was provided. Basically, we with the new bridge, we enhanced the entire experience, which starts from the pier sign. That's the front door of the pier, and still be compatible, reserve the historical values, and meanwhile improve overall safety for pedestrian, bicycles, and vehicular safety, reduce traffic impacts, improve functionality and ADA accessibility. One thing I'd like to point out, in transportation planning, we have 3 basic modes: pedestrian, bicycles, and vehicular modes. And it is very important to understand all these 3 modes are equally important. Not one of them goes over as far as when new developments come. Those have all equal priorities. We've done many public meetings, like I said, with Pier Board, Landmarks Commission. We had a community workshop where various community members came and met with the design team, bridge engineers and bridge architects and city, got a really good understanding and got questions answered, and provided to the designers what they really want. We visited other commissions, disabilities commissions and seniors commissions, and to be able to provide input to the city council. We've engaged with social media, obviously, to advertise the project, to get community interest to the project. And this is city's Be Excited, Be Prepared website. This website has all the construction projects that's going on that are put by the city of Santa Monica, not the private construction, but by the city. And you can get more information and these slides and things like that. Like I mentioned, these are the pictures from the community meetings, one of the community meeting we had. And at the end of the community meeting, it's very important to get the results. Basically, we had a whiteboard. Every group, we split in 4 groups, and they summarize what they want on their board, and at the after their working session, we've summarized all 4 groups. Just kind of a summary of the whole process to be able to show and document what was discussed. And these are all the backup to our designers. Where do we start? I mean, what do we consider? What's more important? There are many ways to do a new bridge, and we also looked at the constraints of the project. It's a very limited site. Again, the project limits are right where it is, footprint is, and the idea is to preserve the minimalistic approach and on the new design. And these are some of the constraints that we're dealing with. Funding requirements. There are certain requirements that has to be met for any bridge infrastructure project replacement or retrofit or maintenance projects. There are geometric site constraints, topographic constraints because of the elevation differences between the intersection, Ocean Colorado intersection, Mumat Ahiko, the beach level, oceanfront walk, and the pier. These are all different elevations that needs to be considered. Environmental issues. Every project has initial community input and conceptual design. That's where we are right now. And once the conceptual alternatives and designs produced, those are basically baseline of the design coming forward. They are vetted through a extensive environmental review process, which considers noise impacts, construction impacts, historical resources, historical impacts, traffic impacts, all these things, environmental, the things that affects the environment. And that's the stage, that's one of the constraints we also study during the project. Existing facilities, Rod talked about Aquarium, right immediately adjacent to the Pier Bridge. Obviously, during the demolition with vibration of the concrete, that will somewhat affect their operations and the exhibits there. So there will be some impacts that they might need to be relocated partially, but these all will be vetted during the environmental process, so we can come up with a plan how to mitigate all these impacts we talked about. One of the most important is the geometric constraints. Why the bridge is the way it is. These blue squares represents the minimum clearances that has to be present for traffic to provide safe traffic flow underneath the bridge for the roadway network underneath. So these are different views just to kind of give you an idea of what is required to be there. So basically the existing bridge is pretty much right at the limit, meeting with the minimum requirements. And the new bridge would have to still meet these requirements as well. The deck, the pier deck is actually very low. The minimum height requirement is 15 feet for any roadway, for a highway. And the deck itself is only 10 and a half feet approximately high in height. So if this bridge would be somewhat wider, that would affect the traffic flow right here because there's not a minimum, it doesn't provide the minimum required clearances. And every time we talked about how do we demo this bridge and how do we build a new one without affecting any access, without affecting anybody. How do we do it? So there are basically a couple ways to do it, 2 ways to do it. One is very similar to the pier reconstruction. We basically build a temporary walkway, temporary access, either to on the north side or on the south side of the existing structure, and route the traffic on the temporary walkway and demo entire concrete structure and build a new bridge. The other way is the stage construction. Because the existing bridge has 2 columns, we could basically put a temporary column and cut the bridge in half and keep the other half in still use by pedestrian and bicycles only. Once the new portion is built, then we route all the traffic on the other side and build the other section, demo the existing and build the other section. So this is just something to, those are the things that needs to be considered during even during the concept design. So our designers came up with 4 alternatives, and these alternatives didn't just grow by themselves, but we started with a baseline replacing kind bridge. As I mentioned, existing bridge is very narrow right now. It has 2. It used to have 2 vehicular lanes with 2 sidewalks, very narrow, 4 or 5 feet narrow sidewalks on both sides. Now it's a little bit better, but to be able to provide the wider sidewalks on both sides and bicycle lanes with vehicular lanes, the new bridge would replacing kind option would be much wider, and it would not match the existing pier wood deck. And it also has some other issues with the vertical clearances at the bottom, and it doesn't match the width, the entryway, and as far as preserving the pier sign. So the other option was why can't we keep the existing port? I mean, build the somewhat similar what we have and have this portion kind of detached and have actually a smoother, longer slope. Current slope is 10%. ADA requirements are minimum 5% straight or 8%, and you would have landings, flat landings every 30 feet, yes.
So there was no plan to just serpentine the entire ramp, like even the vehicle part?
You have to repeat the question.
The question was, how about getting the vehicle serpentine thing? Well, the idea is vehicles doesn't have any problem having with 10% slope. The idea is providing smoother slope is to comply with Americans with Disabilities Act, and not to say only to ADA, but I'm going to refer to the guiding principles to enhance the peer experience. Not only this is not only for ADA compliance, but also you have families with strollers. You have people who has limited mobility. You have people spending all day on the pier, on the beach, tired. At the end of the day, you want to go up 10%. I mean, a very steep slope, or you rather take the easy route. So those are the things to enhance the things that we're thinking about, keeping in mind to enhance the peer experience entirely from start to end. So I'm gonna a little bit fast forward and focus on two alternatives here. I talked about the alternative one, which is a very basic line starting point that we had. And alternative 4, and this I also wanted to mention, how do we come up with the renderings, with the concept development. Basically everything starts with pen and pencil. This is what was drawn with by our designers, having a straight walkway in the center. So whoever wants to take the shortcut, wants to run, can take that in the center. And people who has who like to have a view, who has limited mobility or disabilities, could take the longer route with a smoother slope. This walkway would have a much less slope, but still would follow the slope of the existing, somewhat matching the existing conditions. And you would be able to get in and get out. And these are just some ideas, designers throw out during the conceptual design. So the next thing they do is just basically computerize and model the design. This whole design was modeled in 3D space. You can see in different views and from different points and lighting and shade. I'm going to go back to alternative 4. When I was talking about how do we build the new bridge, and I did mention that we would not be able to provide vehicular access when we are demoing, whether with the stage construction or providing with a temporary walkway. So, but we still need to keep the vehicular access because we have Harbor Patrol, we have police, we have deliveries, we have many things that needs to access to, and also we have parking. So we said, we have to build a temporary bridge from the Appian Way at Moss Avenue, which is the Appian Way is pretty much at the same elevation of the with the pier deck. If you would roll, it will be just a straight shot. So this would be first thought was this temporary vehicular a bridge would provide that solution. But then we decided, going back to the first slides, where people pretty much dominating the pier and the pier itself, we thought, it's been used by the people, not much by the vehicles. So we thought, why don't we separate it? So we have more space, we have to get down, and we don't have to shut down the bridge itself when it's crowded. It could be open just for pedestrian and bicycle traffic only. So we thought maybe we keep this bridge and tell the cars use this bridge and provide that separate safe separation between the pedestrians and the vehicles. It was very well welcomed from the community. The basic need of separating these three modes and providing a safe access. So that's why I'm basically focusing on Alternative 4, which proposes a new vehicular bridge and at Mouse Avenue, and a new bridge, a replaced bridge, somewhat with similar width, similar kind with the ADA path. And this could be used for emergency or limited use only, like whenever there's a fire truck has to go down straight, or ambulance still can be able to use that route. And meanwhile, we also realized there's a missing connection while we're building all this bicycle network in the city, and we have this great bicycle regional bike path on the beach. How do we connect this? We just basically we said, do a simple ramp from the pier deck down to the parking lot, and so that way you have a continuity on your travel, coming down from 4th Street with the new light rail Esplanade, and coming down to the new structure, going down with the again, these are just simple representations. It's not somewhat just basically lines, not something that's designed. That the actual final design will be in the future phases after these two alternatives are vetted through the environmental impacts. These two alternatives have, like I mentioned, somewhat alternative environmental impacts that we have to look and see which alternative provides the most mitigation to those impacts and has the least impact as a whole project. Going forward, so the design comes from the from lines to somewhat actuality. When you look at this, what is this thing? So we got to put some people, we got to put some, light, we got to put some background. You see the Moss Avenue bridge on the back. This would be the new bridge. This is the ADA path that you would walk on, and as the model gets designers work on it, model gets finer and finer. Again, you'll realize these are pretty much the same columns. Again, we're in the concept design process, which really sticks to those yellow and oranges. But to get a really good understanding, you got to come up with somewhat more realistic. So this is just somewhat to, it's not a final design. It's somewhat to get you an idea what those means. It could be just like that with a cool columns with the cable strains, supports. So sometimes these are not good enough. So This is just a line model of the Moss Avenue bridge. These are sometimes not good enough for people to understand. So we got to actually put the reality background in there. So this is the existing picture that we have from for the Moss Avenue Bridge. This is one of the the bridge. The columns are just just to give you some idea, but it could be different ways and different shapes, but at least to give you some idea what a bridge would look like there. This is from Oceanfront Walk. This is how it would look. Again, when you do a project, there are a lot of different elements. There are art elements, there are landscaping. Those are the most important aesthetic elements that we have to put through. These pictures does not have any of those because, like I said, those belong to the final design sections. And how do we get our inspirations? There are so many cool things around the world. Our designers look around different cities, different projects, with similar settings, how other people like it, how it's been built in different places in the world. These are some other things to get your mind, get your inspiration, going. Some other cool things about sustainability. Again, mostly I talked about concrete structure, very boring, right? These are the cool things that could be added to the in our lives that brings more sustainable life, bring more life into our daily hassle. Something just to think about. I'll provide the slides. I won't talk about it much, but here's my information. This is the project address. Thanks for listening.